forbidden AC duct.
Climbed in through that hatch.
Hi! Early this year, I took my first solo adventure to Croatia and Bosnia. A lot of people ask me why I chose those two countries in particular, and honestly I've always had a fascination with the Balkans and Eastern Europe in general. And so right after I finished college and right before I started my full-time job, I had a 2-week window to make it happen. And so I did, and here's the story. So I made it to Split, took a quick shuttle bus ride from the airport over to the downtown area for around $7 US.
At this point, after just having hopped off the plane, I was a complete fish out of water. I was out of my comfort zone and immersed in this foreign land all by myself for the first time. For the rest of the day, I knew I had to fight off that awful transatlantic jet lag, so I took it easy and decided to explore town.
I saw some signs to the overview park of the city, and I had no intention of going there in the first place because I was just trying to walk around the old city because it is like probably 90 degrees out right now. Just decided to follow the sign, and I mean, look at where it took me.
After exploring on foot for an hour or two, I went back to check into the studio that I had rented. At this point, the jet lag was catching up to me, so I called it a night and fell asleep pretty early. The next day, I naturally awoke super early, which gave me plenty of time to explore before the rest of the city woke up.
This place was so packed during the day, and I pretty much just have it to myself right now.
My plan for the day was to explore around town as much as I could with the bike, just to get around faster and see more of the city.
Alright, got a bike for the day from the shop. Let's go explore. Such a fast way to explore the city. I'm like a couple of kilometers out, and it would have just taken way too long to walk here. But
at this point, I had seen what looked like an abandoned building on the horizon, and I knew I had to get in there somehow.
Walked my bike up, saw a way in around the side. Right through here.
It soon became apparent that the structure was a hotel that had been abandoned midway through its construction. But it was cool exploring all the floors and seeing all the graffiti. The rest of the day I biked around and explored some beaches. Nothing too exciting, I was taking it pretty chill those first couple days.
Good morning. Today is the day I go to Sarajevo. It's around 7:30 and I am eating a very healthy breakfast. No, I'm just kidding. I have like actual pizza in the fridge.
I had a couple hours before my bus, so I made it all the way to the top of the lookout, got some snacks, and before I knew it, I was on the bus to Bosnia.
So, I made it to Sarajevo. That was around a 7-hour bus ride, which is just as long as my transatlantic flight. We spent an hour at the border. We had to get off the bus twice, one at the Croatian side and one at the Bosnian side. So that took a while.
Sarajevo felt surprisingly modern for a place that was at war only 30 years ago. And because it's one of the few Muslim-majority countries in Europe, there are mosques everywhere. I headed out to the historic Old Town to grab a quick cevapi dinner and settle down into the hotel for the night.
Alright, it is the morning. It's nice and cool, actually. It was 90 degrees in Split, and in the mountains here it's like 50, 60 degrees in the morning, so nice and cool. 75 cents for a chicken pastry. Pretty good breakfast.
My main aim for the second day was to go see the abandoned Olympic bobsled track up on Mount Trebević nearby, so I did a bit of research and learned that I had to take a gondola all the way up to the top. But not before I stopped to see the most famous landmark of the city.
So this is the Latin Bridge. This is where World War I started, basically, where the Archduke was assassinated right on that corner. So we're in the cable car right now. It was $7 US for one way, and I don't know if I'll regret buying a one-way ticket versus a round trip, because I figured I could just hike back down, but I don't really know how far it is. It looks like we're going quite a ways up into the fog there, but I guess we'll see.
It felt a little bit ominous going by myself up this foggy mountain, and since it was still early there was literally no one else around.
Well, here it is.
Eventually I made it to the old track. It was pretty creepy walking around by myself among this huge dystopian structure, but the path down was pretty straightforward. All you had to do was follow the concrete track, which wound its way through the forest for about a mile or so. It had been used in the 1984 Winter Olympics and had fallen into disrepair since, and now it's a pretty popular place for tourists and graffiti artists alike to visit. On my map, I noticed some other structures nearby, so I went to check those out. This would be the first of many ruins that I'd be in during my trip.
Cool.
The next structure over was a bit disappointing, but it was still exciting to see buildings in such a condition open to the public, and you wouldn't really get anything like that back home.
Cool. Not terrifying at all.
After a beautiful walk down, I went to explore the city more on foot. Walking through the old town, I began to realize that there was a certain peace in knowing that nobody here would ever see me again. Whenever I had to interact with people or understand their cultural norms, such as when I had to eat at a restaurant or order bus tickets, I was still anxious to some degree. But doing my own activities, I began to feel pretty carefree, which was nice.
There's no need to really buy bottled water in the city. You can just go around to the fountains and either drink from them or refill your water bottle, which is really cool.
I spent a few hours exploring a few really fancy shopping centers before heading to the hostel to check in. That night, I enjoyed a wonderful stay at Balkan Han and chatted with a bunch of people from all over the world. I was too preoccupied with trying to connect with my new friends that I forgot to film much of the encounters.
So it's another day in Sarajevo. I'm headed to the east side of the city to get a little overview. Apparently there's some good lookout spots and fortresses that I can go check out.
That morning I made it up to the Yellow Bastion, a fort-turned picnic spot where I enjoyed my breakfast in the company of some dude filming a music video. And some cats. Heading back into town, I visited a couple museums dedicated to the Bosnian War, which I didn't film due to the nature of the content. I still recommend them for educational purposes, however, and here are the names on screen. However, I did check out a natural history museum, which was in this super old classical European type of building. Really cool. My last stop of the day was the Avaz Twist Tower, the tallest skyscraper in Bosnia. Since the clouds were pretty low, I could only really see the valley that the city lies within, and not much of the mountains. The next morning, myself and a few people I'd met at the hostel all took the train together to Mostar, the next stop on my trip. After breakfast at a cafe with my travel companions, we split ways for the day. I'd scouted some ruins on the hillside above the town and had planned to find a bike rental to get there myself, because no buses ran exactly where I wanted.
Okay, we're gonna try and get to a fortress on top of a mountain near the city. I don't really know how long it'll take because it looks pretty high. Okay, right up there. We're trying to get to that fortress. It's gonna be a little bit of a walk, but I'm hoping I can park my bike around halfway up and then walk the rest of the way. And look at this, it's a whole Citroen IP with all the stuff out of it. Isn't that cool? So the road's transitioned to a little more of a gravel track. It looks a little bit steep up there, so might be needing to ditch the bike soon. But there's literally no one else up here, which is a little worrying, but also that means I have the view all to myself, so the gravel's getting a little bit loose, and it's just a little bit too sketchy to bike on with a little bit of a drop over here. So I think I'm gonna walk the rest of the 100 meters or so to get to the first little castle thing.
The first little castle thing was called Work 9, an Austro-Hungarian fortress. I couldn't find too much information on the castle itself, but I enjoyed exploring it nevertheless. Since I was there all by myself, it was pretty spooky walking alone around the dark corridors and rooms, but I didn't come all this way to leave the place unexplored.
Okay, my time at this awesome fortress has come to an end. We're gonna try to get right up there. So I'm about halfway up, and I've elected to stash the bike on the side of the road because it is just way too rocky to be biking. It'll stay here, I'll lock it up, and then hopefully it'll still be here when I get back.
After around 30 minutes of hiking later, I came across a little fortification in the hillside, which was fun to hop around. This next fortress was a little bit underwhelming. It stood as a massive monument against the hill's skyline, but upon getting closer, I realized there wasn't much to explore and climb around.
Alright, leaving the fortress. I know there's another one a little ways down the road, but it doesn't look like there's a good road from here to there. And to walk around the mountain is a little bit too far for me since I'm running a little bit low on water. So I'll probably just start making my way down now. Been hiking for around 2 or 3 hours at this point. So it'll probably take me another hour, hour and a half to get back.
That night I checked into the wonderful Hostel Midas, where I also met some lovely people. Again, I was too preoccupied with meeting people to point a camera at their faces, so I don't have footage of the place. At the breakfast table the next morning, there was some talk about renting a car and driving around to go see some touristy destinations. So my new friends Selena, Lawrence, and Matthias all piled in a car together to go see the sights of Herzegovina. Our first big stop was an abandoned aircraft hangar just outside the city. Built to house MiG-21s during the Cold War, it was essentially a huge U-shaped cavern in the side of a small hill.
I heard some very loud noise come from in there.
At this point, we heard a noise emanating from the darkness, and with pretty much no hesitation, I walked straight in, getting jump scared by some pigeons along the way. Rounding the first corner inside, I saw light way in the distance. However, it was just a graffiti artist from Sarajevo who spoke German. We also left some time to explore some rooms deeper within the hangar.
Oh, the sound. They had some techno party in here, I guess.
Yeah, this would be insane. Oh my god.
Next upon the list was Blagai, a monastery built right where a spring exits the face of a sheer cliff hundreds of feet high. And after that, it was another hour or two across the countryside to see the Kravica Falls near the Croatian border. At this point, it was pretty late in the day and all the tourists had left except for us. As the sun set, we made our way to Pocitelli, famously built on a hillside with a massive medieval castle looming over the village.
Maybe we'll see a hobo come in here a little later.
What?
A hobo? A friend?
Hobo.
Yeah. There's like some guy's jacket.
Yeah. Oh, please don't say that.
This is so awesome at night.
Climbing to the top of the tower with only the light from our phone flashlights was quite the experience, and seeing the town's light from the top was awesome.
Nice experience.
We made it back to Mostar back in time for one last bucket list item. This time we
Nice,
wanted
there
to
you
check
go.
out the Mostar Sniper Tower, a bank that had been converted during the war into a tower from which snipers could shoot people. Pretty much every square inch of the inside is covered with graffiti, and seeing all the weird aliens and creepy faces at night definitely put me on edge.
This is the way to the gulag. Cool. Having fun in the forbidden AC duct.
Yeah,
The whole gang's here.
The next day was a transit day, so nothing special on the itinerary. After a couple buses, I arrived back in Croatia pretty exhausted. The day after that was the beginning of my last few days of traveling, which meant exploring around Zadar.
So here we are in Zadar. The goal for today is to try and get to that island over there. It's called Ugljan, and we're gonna see if we can find like a moped or a scooter or a bike rental or something, just so we can explore the island. Should be fun. Let's go.
I rented an electric assist bike to explore the island faster. The man at the shop I rented it from pointed out a couple beaches and landmarks to hit, so I set those as the day's goals. Biking around the island was enjoyable in itself, and the electric motor made all the hill climbs much easier. Overall, it was a pretty laid-back day, which was nice, but I realized I needed a little bit more adventure and excitement for my following days. The next day, I really wanted to hit the mainland and explore there. After some Google Maps research, I had developed a plan for the day.
We're 30 minutes outside of Zadar. It's much quieter here, obviously, but it was a pretty straightforward bus ride since I was just able to buy the bus tickets at the Zadar station. But I didn't see a bus stop on the right side of the road to get back to Zadar, so I'm not really sure how to do that. So I might have to walk up to Nin or something and catch a bus from there, but we'll figure it out and I'll show you what I came here to see. So let's go find it. So we made it here to our destination. This is the Zaton Air Base. It used to be some sort of old Yugoslav Air Force base, I believe. But I mean, after it's been decommissioned, they just put piles of rubble and stuff here so no planes can land. And it's kind of a tourist attraction now. You can see all these car tire tracks. There's a bunch of cars parked up there. So supposedly there are some buildings that we can go check out as well.
After walking around aimlessly on the runway for a bit, I finally pulled up Google Maps satellite view and made my way toward the administrative buildings of the base.
Okay, I think that's enough climbing for today. I would be lying if I said I wasn't scared up here. It's maybe like 50 to 70 feet down. It's a little ways. I am putting a lot of trust on some old Yugoslavian welders right now.
After getting my daily fill of abandoned buildings, I made it back to Zadar to enjoy the evening.
So today is my last full day on the island. I pretty much explored most of what I wanted to see on the first day, so I'm headed back again to the mainland like I did yesterday. I'll have to check out some old relics in the countryside. You'll see what those are in a minute. But basically it's around a 30-minute walk to the ferry and then another 30-minute ferry to the mainland. And then I have to get over to the bus station and then wait for my bus to depart. There's a lot of friction when it comes to commuting, especially because I'm staying here on the island. So if I were to do this again, I should have definitely stayed on the mainland.
That being said, I definitely enjoyed my time on the island. Figuring out the right places to stay during this first solo trip was definitely a good learning experience for me.
So right now we're on the outskirts of the village of Škabrnja. I think I got off one stop too early, so I'm gonna have to do a bit of walking to get where I want.
After some walking, I finally arrived at my destination. Yep, a real-life tank.
So this is one of the old relics from the war, and they put it next to this huge cross as a memorial from the Homeland War, and apparently we can go inside.
It was pretty sketchy arriving at the tank and peering into the dark interior, but I knew I had to jump in.
Oh my god. It still smells like grease. Wow. So we're in the tank now. I climbed in through that hatch, and it looks like they've kept most of the interior, surprisingly. The gun is still here. The engine is not surprisingly taken out though. That bay would have been where the engine would have sat. I'm assuming those are like the gearboxes for the two treads. But yeah, that's where the engine would have been. And over there is where all the shells would have been for the gun. This is just a chunk of steel. Oh my gosh. Oh my, this thing moves. What on earth? Wow, that's where the driver would have sat. In a semi-reclined position, I'm assuming. So this is the driver's seat, obviously. You've got some pedals that still move a little bit. Maybe this is the clutch and that's like the accelerator. And these are to change gears, I guess. These look like your fuses up here. It's like the fuse box. And I guess this is your view while driving this thing. Goodbye, tank. Maybe I would have stayed longer if there were less wasps inside.
I spent the rest of the evening back in Zadar exploring the old town. Pretty much all seaside Croatian old towns are composed of stone buildings and narrow alleyways, so this one wasn't anything super special. I did, however, find the view from the bell tower quite spectacular. During my last full day, I explored the town of Trogir, which is closer to the airport I'd be taking my flight out of.
Hvala.
In the end, this 2-week stint was a great way for me to learn how to travel by myself. From meeting people along the way to figuring out what was interesting for me to see and do, I really enjoyed my time in Croatia and Bosnia. One of the big takeaways is that I realized that traveling by yourself doesn't mean you're necessarily alone. It just means that you're independent. There's a certain comfort in being somewhere new, hyper-aware of your surroundings, and nothing to distract you from the world. Initially, when planning the trip, I booked more studio apartments than hostels, and a big learning point was that hostels were way more fun than I anticipated. Going solo meant that it was pretty easy for me to meet and go out with people, especially at hostels, without the extra friction of being with a friend or group of friends. I think it was also easier for people to approach me and initiate conversation, which was nice. Anyway, that's pretty much it for now. Solo traveling was definitely the highlight of my year among many other big changes in my life, so I'm glad to be able to have shared it with you all. Once again, thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it.